Thank you so much, Vincent. This is quite a beautiful portrait of Katherine and Bernie Krause, and they're going to join us at any moment now. Yes, here they are. Thank you so much, Katherine and Bernie, for joining us. Thank you so much you're in Sonoma right now, and in New York we have almost 200 people with us. You can hear them, but you can give another round of applause. You can hear the... That's anthrophony for you, live from New York City. Thank you so much for joining us, Vincent and Katherine and Bernie. It's quite such a beautiful portrait and an eye-opener for many of us. It was definitely for me and many people at FIAF, and I would imagine people in the audience. And I wanted to ask you, Bernie, you're a pioneer in soundscape ecology, and you've been doing that, you said, for 50 years. Why do you think it took so long for the scientific community in particular to catch on to your ideas?
Well, you know, we're a visual culture, and because we know most of the world through what we see. And for me, I've learned about this world from what I hear, because I don't see very well. So it just takes a long time for the culture to readjust to new ideas. And one of those new ideas is soundscape ecology, and how the natural world and the sounds of the natural world are informing us. Because all of these biophonies, all of these soundscapes that we hear, these natural soundscapes, are narratives of place. They tell us a story. And all we need is the Rosetta Stone to unlock the key to that mystery and what those stories are all about. And we're just learning about that now. You know, in Western culture, we tend to not be so connected to the natural world like many ancient cultures are. And we need to relearn that connection.
And I would imagine, as a trained musician, that's something you're more attuned to, right? Listening and the sounds, and being able to listen to the soundscapes as a whole and not just things you kind of pick apart. Do you think
I'm sorry. The whole idea of the Great Animal Orchestra was that we learned our music from the sounds of the natural world. We learned about rhythm because we watched the ways in which chimpanzees and the other great apes pounded out rhythms on the buttresses of fig trees in the rainforests of the world. And we learned our rhythm from that because we're mimics, and we copied them. We learned melody from the birds. We learned the ways in which all of these animals learn to vocalize together to stay out of each other's way, just like instruments in an orchestra. And we mimicked that as well, the ways in which we orchestrate sound and construct sound. So, you know, it all comes from all of the stuff that we know in our culture comes from some point in the natural world.
And Katherine, in the film you explained you come from film and video production. Can you tell us a little bit more about your background and also how you got involved with Wild Sanctuary and this work?
That's a longer story than you might want to hear tonight. But basically, my background is in media and marketing, and I was involved in a career in advertising and public relations. And that's where Bernie and I met. And we worked on some commercial pieces together. I was doing film and video production at the time. He was still doing music for films and videos at that time. And that's when we met. When we got together some years later, we started a conversation that we're still having. And it's been a wonderful experience for me because I have so embraced his work and appreciated it, and could see that it also needed to have more of a public face put on it, because as you know, scientists in the field, they very often don't have the time or inclination to be able to communicate about their work. This is a very important aspect of any kind of field research or findings, is how do you tell others about that? So that's where I found my niche and sort of have stayed in that arena for the duration of the time we've been together.
I think we'll go back to the Wild Sanctuary in a minute, because I think people will want to hear more about it as well. And you, Vincent, you had mentioned to me earlier that you didn't know about Bernie's work. So how did you get involved in making this film? It was a commission, right?
Yeah, it was a commission. Fondation Cartier was looking for. Hi, Bernie and Katherine. So nice to meet you again, to see you again.
Bravo, Vincent.
Bravo
yeah.
to you. They were looking for a director to do this movie. It was thought that it would be in dialogue with the exhibition mentioned in the movie, the Great Animal Orchestra, to dialogue and to inform, maybe to listen to the Bernie's voice, not only the animal voices, but also Bernie's voice, and to pass his ideas and his vision of his work and where it comes from and what it tells on nature and on our world and on our relationship to it. So that was the start, and then yes, I didn't know about Bernie's work, but it was not a bad thing. I mean, I was not apprehended like fan or something like that. I was kind of virgin.
New, yeah.
Yeah, new, and so I listened to his sound, and yeah, like Matthew say in the film, it took me somewhere else, and it's really immersive, and it was really interesting to create something visual about something that we have to listen to. So that was the beginning of it.
Right. And you, it turns into a good mix, I think, into listening to what Bernie has to say about his work, and the way the visual aspect is quite interesting. Bernie, what you get, are you able to visualize those sounds on your monitor as well, and bringing in also the exhibit as too, yeah. And
well, the important, I'm sorry, the important thing was here to find a way to transform the scientific data into a work of art. And that was one of the visions that we worked out with the Fondation Cartier, and one of the things that Vincent has been able to, latch onto and understand and bring to this film in a way that I don't think anybody else could have done that, because it required a real sensibility in relationship to that kind of work, and Vincent really captured it in this film.
Well, that's very true. And Katherine, I think you say something in the film too that I'd like you to talk more about it, how art is important to communicate those ideas. And if you want to maybe expand on this a little bit, but also I would love to hear from the three of you how you feel, how the exhibit at the Fondation Cartier and how it traveled around the world has maybe helped change public perceptions about this kind of work. Did it really, at the same time, help people understand what it was all about, and give you opportunities also to have your work be more visible through those exhibit and art pieces?
I think this is something Bernie might want to lead on here, because it's his work that is being portrayed, and it's been a delight to be able to be part of this and to have Vincent be part of this. But did you want to begin?
One of the things that's really important to keep in mind about this work is that with music, if we're listening to music and just music alone, we're listening to a medium that is somehow culturally informed and culturally biased. However, when we're listening to natural soundscapes, biophonies, this reaches across all cultures, all languages, all ages. And every human being is affected by the soundscapes of the natural world, because they're so atavistic and they're part of our DNA. There's something that we gravitate to and listen to in a way that is non-judgmental, and it has no bias to it. So we can show it in Shanghai, we can show it in Italy or in France and the UK and America, and everybody understands it in some way, in their own way. And it doesn't have that kind of barrier to it that, you know, some people like the music and some people don't like the music. But with natural soundscapes, there's no way to really judge it. It just is, and you either like it or you don't.
Oh, that's actually, I wanted also to ask you about this, because in the film, we see that you went to many parts of the world, and especially Africa and many states in the US. You also probably went to other places in the world, right, to record sounds. Where else did you go?
Oh, Indonesia, the Antarctic, up in the Arctic and northern part of Alaska, all the oceans of the world, you know, to record marine mammals and so on. So yeah, I mean, I've been pretty much all continents, and it's been, you know, it's been quite a trip.
And do you, it actually relates back to the exhibit, because I was wondering, when you traveled, how people that you met through your travels and your recordings, how did they understand what you were doing? Did what your project speak to people in some places more than others?
That's a good question. It ranges all over the place. I mean, some people really gravitated to it and understood it, and other people just sort of blew it off and didn't think anything of it. Certainly here in the U.S., we had more problems here than almost any other place in the world. I can say that for a fact. I mean, the National Park Service, for instance, when I started to work with the national parks, had literally laws against recording with professional equipment in the national parks. They've changed that now, of course. It was really weird.
That sounds.
I actually got arrested in a national park for recording with a tripod. You know, I had my microphones mounted on a tripod, and so the ranger who arrested me showed me the law in the book that said that unless I have a license, I can't record on a tripod. So the next day I came back with a monopod, one thing, and I stuck my mic on the monopod because it wasn't in the book, and she couldn't arrest me then. So yeah, the National Park Service did have that on the books.
I think in a way, in those earlier days, it was a way of people beginning to become aware of the power of media. And as soon as that happens, then there's the ownership of that media and whose it is. And so I think in that day, the national parks were more interested in, how do we control this? How do we keep people from doing this or own it if they do? And, you know, whose is it? It's on our land, that kind of thing. It was a dialogue for a while that had to take place. And then at that time, we were trying to introduce them to the real intrinsic value of keeping these spaces quiet, and so that these sounds could be heard by the visiting public. And I think after several decades, they started to get it.
No, in the late 80s, early 90s, I actually introduced the Park Service to the idea of recording natural soundscapes, and they have a whole department now for recording.
So I guess they took on some of your work, right?
Record. Absolutely.
Absolutely. That's great. Yeah. That's amazing. Go ahead, Katherine.
In part, this is why having a film like the one that Vincent made is so vital, because it helps to communicate this work and this whole field really in a different way, a different voice. And it's very valuable, and in this case, so well done. But the idea that there are so many animals in the creature chorus, so many voices in the choir, that to have a healthy community as well, there should be many voices in the choir. Vincent's is one, and it's really wonderful to be a part of what he's doing now as well. so new to this work and able to express it eloquently.
And Vincent, so you kept the soundtrack to really Bernie speaking and all the soundscapes that you recorded, but there's one, what seems to be a tribal song at the very end, and it overlaps with is that the Bob Dylan quote? Is it Bob? No, it's David Bowie, I'm sorry. But can you talk about this, your choice of doing this?
Bernie just a few minutes ago talked about the influence of nature on our expression, and this piece was recorded by Bernie and Louis Arnaud, who is a sound ethnologist living with Pygmy in Africa, and these sounds, in fact, they're doing music listening to the nature around them, so they are singing and playing with instruments in relationship with nature, and not as we do, closing ourselves between walls in the churches or places like that. So, and also it was like to create something, I think, a positive note to end the movie, and to remember that it has been a moment in history, in our human history, where we were not competing with nature, and we were not taking over it. We were able to listen to it and to be respectful toward nature. So it was a sensitive way, I hope, to illustrate that idea, and to make the audience feel it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a very nice way to wrap up the film in some ways, and everything that Bernie you say in the film, really connecting it back to us, and not in a just, but just kind of bringing it back to the fact that as humans we're also animals, and we should, we lost that connection with soundscapes. It's very nice. And I also wanted to thank you both for talking about your experience of losing everything in a wildfire, because you lost most of your life and a lot of your work, and it must not be easy to share that experience. And I was interested to know if you felt that it was important to talk about it in this portrait, or is that something that, Vincent, you discussed together about including that part of your life and revisiting your old house, or whatever remains of it, yeah.
Well, what's important about this is that we were able to still save the archive and the natural sounds. 6 months, as I said in the film, 6 months before the fires in October of 2017, I had made the copies of these recordings and got them offshore at the Fondation Cartier. And luckily, that document was there at the Fondation, and and we're having this conversation this evening simply because we happened to make that decision then.
Well, thank you for sharing. And I want to make sure we have time for questions for the audience. So we're going to open it up. If you want to ask a question, raise your hand. And we have microphones on the aisle. So if you could just wait for someone to get the microphone to you, so that Bernie and Katherine can hear you, and also we can record properly. So there's a questions right there in the middle, yeah.
First of all, I have great respect for your activism. You have come from the music industry, and we all know that everybody listens to music every day. And so have you been able to bring your important voice into that massive industry, that you could be heard large and wide? Because coming here for 200 people tonight, I think everybody will take a big piece of this home and will want to have this beautiful orchestra of life sing some longer. But, is there any possibility maybe of the Fondation Cartier to take it with your activism to this big fat music industry?
Well, in answer to that question, actually, it's two different kind of industries. One is the budding industry of natural soundscapes, and the other is the huge music industry that's so loud and encompassing in our culture. So the two rarely meet. But I have to say that we've written a symphony called the Great Animal Orchestra, Symphony for Orchestra and Wild Soundscapes, which was commissioned by the BBC and recorded by the BBC National Orchestra of Wales and premiered in 2014. So yeah, we've done that. We've recorded I've done the score for a ballet for the Alonzo King Lines Ballet in San Francisco. They're an international corps that's based in San Francisco, and the piece actually was performed in Central Park in 2016. So yeah, we're doing that. And also, I recorded an album 35 years ago where we were testing the music industry, and this album is an album of sampled animal sounds, and there are 300 different animal sounds in this. There's no synthesizer and no traditional instruments. It's an album called Gorillas in the Mix, and it's got tunes like Ape, No Mountain High Enough, and Stomp in the Name of Love, and
Was
and
that
so
a
on.
novelty album?
Yeah, and Trout from Ipanema. So it's got some fun stuff on it, and you can get it. It's as I said, it's called Gorillas in the Mix, and it's on Rykodisc. And you're certainly welcome to listen to it. It's a fun album, and I did it because we were working with a lot of kids in the schools, and they didn't want to hear a talking head. And so I put this album together with a hip hop and a rap tune, a gorilla rap, and what else did we have? We had we had a
kind of samba.
Samba also. So it has all kinds of different music if you're interested in that. And that's the pop end of things that we've tried. So yeah, we're working with it, and we're seeing how we can develop that in conjunction. But really, the two don't interact terribly well, I think. And soundscapes are the original orchestras, and these are the things we need to listen to in their pure form.
So for musicians, budding musicians and experienced musicians that may not have heard of this work, this has the power possibly to really open their ears to new possibilities in their own compositions, because if they don't understand natural soundscape, then they really don't understand music, because it's the origin story of music. And so I think that's sort of the interesting link, the resource for talking about the work in the music industry, and for maybe finding value for it in the music industry that can then turn around and support keeping these natural spaces and natural wild habitats alive and resonant, because it will be a very short time, if we don't do that, that this orchestra of the wild, that these natural sounds really no longer stir the public, that we will lose our ability to hear it as it is drowned out. So I think, yes, there's a great potential in the music industry, but they have to listen and know about the work. So
that was a lovely question. Thank you. Gentleman right here. Yes. Yeah.
I'm very glad Madame asked the question she asked, because my question follows up from your question. I think many people in the audience here tonight so much enjoy this film and are already thinking of other people that they know who should see the film. I happen to be a music and arts journalist, and I know several musicians who would want to see this film. What is Fondation Cartier or FIAF How can this film be made visible online, or will it be that people can see it? It's an important film that many more people than the 200 lucky people in this room should be seeing.
You're absolutely right. Bernie, or maybe even Vincent, do you know?
There is actually a program called Cine School where American students can see it, and there is right now diffusion through festival and the places, cities where the film is, the installation is exhibited. But yeah, it's, yeah, okay, thank you. It's a good idea.
Maybe we can help. We'll talk. Maybe we can help. Yeah.
But one other thing we should probably mention is that just a few hours from New York is an exhibit called the Great Animal Orchestra, on which this film was based, really. And it's in Salem, Massachusetts, at the Peabody Essex Museum. And I would say that, you know, the film is very much a part of that. And I would say it's really, for those of you who are really interested in this subject and its relationship to what all the things we're talking about now, it's probably a good place to spend a couple of hours engaging in this work.
Yeah. Bernie, I think Dorothée mentioned that the exhibit is on view through July 10th. So in Salem, at the Peabody Essex. Yeah. We have a gentleman right here.
So having so much experience with the music, with the soundscapes, and essentially like the essence of life, what insight does that give you into how to respond and to how to heal and recover these areas?
Wow, that's a good question. A lot of groups right now are beginning to understand the restorative qualities of natural soundscapes. For instance, the Japanese have developed a whole new system called Shinrin-yoku, which means forest bathing. And that's going off into the natural world, into a park, even if you can't get up into a place that's truly wild. Just go up the Hudson River and you'll find lots of places that are really green. Go up into the Adirondacks and up near Lake Champlain, and you'll find plenty of places that you can be alone in the forest and really take in the spirit of that place. And it's very refreshing. And as I say, it's therapeutic. And the Japanese have figured that out in the late 80s, and they've developed a whole program. Check it out. It's called forest bathing. And I think there are several books and articles written on that subject alone.
Thank you. Gentleman right here with a blue shirt. Thank you.
Dr. Krause, have you been influenced at all by Gregory Bateson's work? Apart from his anthropological and cybernetic and philosophical works, he established John Lilly's dolphin labs in Hawaii in the late 60s, early 70s, and did an extensive amount of recording of dolphins in Hawaii. I'm wondering if Bateson was an influence in your work.
I served on a doctoral committee with him, and the answer is yes. He came up with a lot of pretty funny jokes that I liked very much, and we spent some time together. He introduced me to Ken Norris, who worked with a lot of dolphins as well, and we did spend some time together. By the way, Gregory Bateson was married to Margaret Mead, for those of you in the audience who would like to know those things.
A great anthropologist. Yeah. We can take a couple more questions. There's someone in the back raising their hand, and I think you have a headband maybe, or a hat.
Hi. I mean, I just want to take, in a way, a step back or step in maybe, wondering if you have a broader message than the sound of animals, of our relationship to nature. I hear something in your message that is beyond the sound of the animals. I hear something that should make us realize that we are part of nature and not next to nature. So I wanted to hear a little bit more about your thought on this.
Well, I never used the word nature. in my work or in my writings. And the reason is because the origins of the term back in the 4th century, when Constantine was trying to describe what was out there and dangerous and unknowable and really a problem to understand. And they latched on, he and his monks latched onto the term natura. Notice the feminine ending, unknowable, dangerous, and so on. So the upshot was that they went into a conference and came out with a definition of the word nature, which was at enmity with God. And when I read that and began to understand really our relationship, the ways in which it has evolved, I've never used the term nature again in my work. I use natural soundscapes and stuff that's related to it, but I really try to stay away from that term because it divides us. There's that which is out there, which is again unknowable and a problem, and there's us. You know, we're no problem. We understand each other. We're cool, yeah, right? But the natural world tells us something different. What I like about this work is that with a terrible case of ADHD that I've suffered from since I was a kid, it's done a lot to help me get over those issues that are related to the ADHD. And I'm very thankful I've had the opportunity to incorporate natural world soundscapes, which to me are very life affirming in my life and in my work. And it's made a big difference. And that's the reason, by the way, that I quit music in the first place, because it was too competitive. It was too full of stuff and feathers that weren't important.
And we have time for one last question. The young person right here. Oh, you have the microphone. Good.
So, Bernie, out of all the animal sounds that you made, how many have you made in 2021?
3. In 2020, since 2021, over the last year, don't forget, we're in California right now where there's a very serious drought. And one of the results of the drought is because when there's no water, there are very few animals around. And when we go out and record now, there are very few birds and almost no frogs and no insects yet, which is really telling. So it's like when you're sick, it shows in your voice when you try to talk. It's the same thing with the natural world. When the natural world ain't feeling too good, and when it's having problems and it's kind of not well, it shows right in the voice with the way it expresses itself. How do you like that?
That's kind of, yeah. That's a good way to put it. Very, very interesting. Very, yeah. A lot of food for thought. Very interesting. Is there anything else you want to say, Vincent, before we close?
What could I add?
Vincent, you look a little hungry.
No, you're just too good at punchlines, so I couldn't compete with you.
No, no.
No, it's okay.
No, to be able to have you as a director on this was a real pleasure, because there was an earlier question about how did you feel about talking about the fire or the loss or whatever, and really initially not good. It wasn't something that I think either one of us went into thinking, oh great, we get to discuss this experience. But with Vincent, it was easy to feel the trust in the direction and to just say, yeah, we leave this up to you. Whatever it is that you're doing, we'll go with. And we're really glad we did that. And the proof is in the film. Thank you for that, Vincent.
That's very nice. Thank you, Katherine. Well, thank you so much, Katherine and Bernie and Vincent, for being here with us and taking the time. Thank you to everyone who came. It was really quite a beautiful evening and a great film. So if you can go to Salem, Massachusetts through July 10th, please go check it out. The exhibit looks really quite incredible and a good way to continue the thinking around these issues. And also I wanted to point out your book, The Great Animal Orchestra, Bernie Krause, which I just started to read and is quite, is really a great read as well. So you should check it out. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you both.
Thank you both.